Hello, everyone. This is Laird Mita with Group 7. We are presenting the U.S. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, also known as the FCPA. Group 7 is Jeremy, Corey, Jed, and myself, Laird. So the FCPA was enacted by Congress in 1977. It was enacted to countermeasure against the U.S. companies bribing foreign officials. It has a threefold purpose: halt corrupt practices, create a level playing field for honest businesses, restore public confidence, as well as the integrity of the markets. A little bit of a history. So it was enacted in the wake of the Watergate scandals in the 1970s. The SEC at that time had discovered over 400 U.S. companies had paid hundreds of millions of dollars in bribes to U.S. foreign officials. Corporate records had been falsified to hide the bribes, and not just the foreign officials, but also contributions, these slush funds, contributions to U.S. officials running for re-election. FCPA contains, because of this, it contains two provisions. One is the anti-bribery, and the other one is the accounting, internal controls, and provisions. It is enforced jointly by the DOJ and the Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission. So corruption is bad. Corruption is bad for business, is bad for society. There's a society cost because of corruption. In this case, we're going to look into the business cost. So corruption threatens to undermine the political stability and economic development. It does this because it creates an anti-competitive environment. It distorts prices. It increases the cost of doing business globally. And also for a lot of these companies governments in developing countries, it makes their costs and their contracts much higher. The anti-bribery provision. So the FCPA addresses corruption in two ways, as we mentioned. One is it prohibits bribery to foreign officials, and then the second, it creates accounting provisions in record keeping and internal control standards. Who's covered under the anti-bribery provision? We've got the issuers, the domestic concerns, and other persons who are neither one of these two. And we'll talk more about what's an issuer and what's a domestic concern. An issuer, so basically any company that's traded publicly. If you have to file reports with the SEC, you're an issuer. As far as a domestic concern, it could be any U.S. citizen, a national or a resident, so a green card holder of the U.S. is a domestic concern. Any corporations that are rooted here in the U.S., partnerships, associations, business trust, even unincorporated organizations. If you're rooted here in the U.S., incorporated here, then you're subject to this provision. What this means for a lot of these multinational companies which have a subsidiary in the U.S., they are subject to the U.S. law. They're subject to the FCPA, which means the United States government can investigate them not only for their practices in the U.S., but for the entire company and all their practices around the globe. So it has a very far reach, far beyond just the U.S. companies. And we will demonstrate that later on. What constitutes a violation? So it has to be, it must be made corruptly. So you attempting to bribe a foreign official. It has to be willful, and also it has to involve giving anything of value. It doesn't have to be money. It could be gifts and other kickbacks that have a monetary value of some sort. So what is covered? So some of the examples of the actions taken to retain or obtain business. So things such as winning a contract, avoiding contract termination, avoiding taxes or penalties, circumventing rules of importation of products, influencing a procurement process. Some of the examples of the bribery, either to officials or to custom officials. It doesn't have to be government officials. Evading customs on imported goods, obtaining false documents related to temporary import permits, extended contracts, and lowering tax assessment. And this is actually a pretty common one with border agents, especially. So all of these actions, basically, what they do is they create an uncompetitive environment. They put a certain company at an advantage, and their competitors who are playing by the rules and abiding the law have them at a disadvantage. Okay, so let's cover some of the cases. Lockheed Martin, this was one of the first major cases in the 1970s, and especially Lockheed being a defense contractor and closely affiliated with the government, this was a big deal at that time. So they paid up to almost $13 million in bribes to Japanese government officials and businessmen to obtain, in order to sell military aircraft to Japan. Very similar thing happened with Dutch officials as well. So, and this was a joint investigation between the U.S. government as well as the Dutch and the Japanese governments. The next case, Siemens. So this is the biggest case to date, the biggest settlement for the under the FCPA. So this was settled in 2008, by the way. So Siemens had made it a business practice starting from the 90s up until the investigation was initiated. It was a business practice for them to bribe foreign officials. They did this quite often, not just in foreign governments, but United Nations also. And the practices were part of like just a standard operation. This is how they conducted business. Eventually, Siemens settled for $1.6 billion with U.S. and European government agencies. And in addition to this, also they spent over $1 billion in just internal costs to manage the investigation process. And it's a very extensive process. This is this is an ongoing investigation right now. This is Walmart. And this is a very interesting, in here we're going to go through in detail how things happen, how this process takes place. So this was launched in 2012, related to Walmart's operations in Mexico. And very interesting how it started. Basically the DOJ, this was due to several articles by the New York Times that talked about in detail how Walmart was bribing foreign Mexican officials to obtain licenses and permits. So the DOJ got wind of this and they started the investigation. Very soon, investigation spread to many other countries. And right now, the analysts are showing that Mexico, it's actually not the biggest risk for Walmart anymore. That's not much really happened there. There's going to be a fine, but not that bad. It's India where the real big risk now lies for Walmart, and who knows, could be other countries too. China could be next. This is very interesting. The cooperation between governmental agencies, not just the U.S., but foreign ones, has become quite a bit, it's become more and more sophisticated over time. And so for example, just in this investigation alone, you've got DOJ, the SEC, FBI, and the IRS, as well as foreign government agencies. So the settlement, we don't know that yet. It's estimated to be in the hundreds of millions, but it's not quite known what it's going to be. What it is known is the cost that Walmart has incurred so far for dealing with this investigation. And it is almost $800 million. It's estimated to be by the end of 2016. It ends up being around $650,000 a day that's costing Walmart to just get this investigation, to manage the investigation. In addition to this, you've also got obviously the stock price has dropped, and the analysts have estimated that it's around $7 billion. Why the value, the market capitalization of Walmart has lost around $7 billion because of the investigation. This chart here is just a quick summary of some of the recent cases settled, and we picked some of the big ones. And obviously there's a list longer with more cases, but these were the big ones. And as you can tell here, the companies don't have to be from the US, they're from all over it. And if you read their settlements, they're actually not much. As you can tell here, the violation location, I mean, it's either in India or, in Asia or Eastern Europe and other places. This Wimpelcom, this is a telecommunications company from the Netherlands. It just recently got settled for almost 800 million. This is a very interesting one. The cooperation here was 21 different governmental agencies, 4 U.S. Agencies, and then 17 foreign agencies from many countries. I think it was almost closer to 10 countries that cooperated in this investigation. I'm not going to go into details. You guys can look it up, but it just tells you how far the U.S. law has reached into the fight for corruption, not just for the U.S. companies, but around the world. So this chart here just shows some of the fines, just the recent fines that the FCPA has settled, and just this year alone were 700 or 872 million. And as you can tell here, the numbers have gone up. If you look at even the past decade, the FCPA enforcement has gotten more stricter over the years. The penalties, I won't go too far into details here. Just really quick, so there's 2 types of penalties. You've got civil penalties and you've got civil penalties, or excuse me, criminal penalties and civil penalties. And this is very common with many laws and acts such as this. Well, like anti-kickback in healthcare is very similar to this, and as far as the enforcement. So both civil and criminal have the bribery provision. They also have the accounting provision. Another very important sort of a last resort that the government can always pull if it really wants to is it could debar you from any government contracts or programs. It could revoke any contract it has with you. So if you're a contractor that works closely with the government, you're at risk from losing these contracts. And in a lot of cases, at least in the healthcare world, when the anti-kickback statute is violated, the government, what they'll do is they will place you under a corporate integrity agreement for 5 or more years with them, to where you will show them how you are going to implement a compliance program throughout your company to fight these corruption practices. It's obviously very expensive and takes a lot of time and efforts, and it changes your dynamics of your business. So this is very important. This part is a big deal the government could do. Whistleblowing could be done through various acts. It could be through the Sarbanes-Oxley, the Dodd-Frank Act, the recent 2010 Act of Financial Services. The SEC has a program to actually protect as well as financially reward whistleblowers. So overall, this was our presentation. Just to summarize a little bit some of the big points. Bribery and corruption have major social and business costs. The social costs are the impediment of economic development and growth, the weakening of democratic values and the rule of law, the undermining of stability and security, because these actions facilitate, criminal activities. So they're not good for stability and security. The business costs, as we talked, they're pretty high. You've got heavy fines and investigating costs. You have the potential debarment from government contracts and programs if that's a significant component of doing business. Obviously, loss of customers. Customers don't want to work with you anymore because you could be at risk. So they might take a step back and wait until the investigation is done. Damage to the brand. And also, overall, all of these will lead to damage to their shareholder value. Well, this concludes our presentation. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to your comments.